Meningitis is a potentially fatal disease which is notoriously difficult to diagnose.
Gus, in mid-December, showed some rather strange symptoms of not being his normal self.
999 Lifesavers has valuable advice to help you know the symptoms because early diagnosis is vital.
He recognised me. It was just the most wonderful moment, and I was able to pick him up.
You could be someone's first line of defence against meningitis. 999 Lifesavers, Friday at 8 on BBC One.
This Saturday on the National Lottery, have we got a show for you? Have we?
With Mariah Carey, the cast of Bugsy Malone and our host Ronnie Corbett, we certainly have. Plus, Ronnie reports from his hometown of Edinburgh. And there's a rollover jackpot estimated at £14 million.
Why don't you join me this Saturday on the National Lottery? I've got my ticket.
The takings are small, but the laughter's large. On BBC One, big ideas from the Grace Brothers staff in 15 minutes. First on BBC One, the news with Moira Stewart.
The snatched baby, Carly Hawthorne, is back with her parents after police traced her to a house in Basildon. Her relieved father showed her briefly to the press after what he says was the worst night in his life. A Russian military plane has crashed into a block of flats in Siberia in one of the country's worst aviation accidents. And England come close to victory against the All Blacks with the highest draw in rugby test history. Good evening. The newborn baby, Carly Hawthorne, snatched from a hospital in Essex yesterday, has appeared safe and well at a press conference cradled in her father's arms. Carly was found early this morning at a house in Basildon after a call from a member of the public. Essex police are still questioning a woman in connection with the abduction.
Safe in the arms of her father, Carly Hawthorne was oblivious to the emotional relief surrounding her return today.
Well done. Thank you very much.
Journalists and camera crews burst into applause at the sight of the day-old baby, her father capable only of a few words of gratitude.
I'd just like to thank the police and everybody for what they've done.
Carly was found at this house in Basildon in the early hours of today. It followed a telephone tip-off. Officers arrested one woman. They later made clear their delight at seeing Carly.
And I went to bed at 3 o'clock this morning and your mind's ticking, have we done everything? And I can say probably the best call I had was from Steve at 4:45 to say it's just 7 words. We've got her, she's alive and well.
Police issued this picture of a woman taken at Basildon Hospital during their search. They're not saying if she's connected to the case. A woman in her 30s is currently being questioned at Basildon Police Station. Doctors at the Basildon Hospital where Carly was born have confirmed the baby was unharmed.
Baby was washed and changed, thoroughly examined top to toe. No signs of any damage whatsoever, and is now sleeping peacefully by her mother's bed.
The sense of relief spread quickly to Carly's relatives, her grandmother's delight undisguised.
Carl phoned us, my son phoned us at 4 o'clock this morning, so my other son Lewis came round. We all went to the hospital to see her. That's the first time we've seen her, and she is beautiful.
The family's local pub also joined in the shared sense of relief. There was smiles all round.
We're all overwhelmed and delighted and relieved, immensely relieved.
We don't know what to say. We just want to wait and see Carl, give him a big hug.
Despite being born, abducted and returned, all in the space of her first day on Earth, doctors don't think Carly will suffer any long-term effects. They say she's now bonding normally with her parents. The aim now is to get back to regular family routine, having faced the trauma of a lifetime in less than 24 hours. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News in Basildon.
More than 150 people are feared dead after a Russian military cargo plane crashed into a block of flats in a suburb of Irkutsk in southern Siberia. The dead include all 46 passengers and crew and an estimated 100 people on the ground. Rescue workers are still trying to free those trapped in the rubble. We've just received the first pictures from the scene.
Just minutes into its flight, the massive military cargo plane, with a wingspan a third as big as a jumbo jet, tipped forward and plunged into the town of Irkutsk too. It smashed into a 5-story block of flats in the middle of the day, catching people as they rested at home at the weekend. The plane was carrying a cargo of 2 Sukhoi fighter jets. It's thought as many as 150 people may have died, including 17 crew members and 6 passengers. Rescue workers trying to reach those trapped in the ruins were impeded by the fire which raged for several hours after the crash. The plane's 4 black boxes have already been recovered. One theory is that 2 engines on the plane's left wing failed. Another, that the cargo may have broken loose.
Hours after the crash, rescue teams continue to work through the night and freezing cold. There's still a faint chance that some of those buried beneath the rubble of their own homes are still alive. Robert Parsons, BBC News, Moscow.
Police in Northern Ireland say they're not ruling out a sectarian motive for the murder of a Catholic man in a Belfast suburb. Gerard Devlin, a married man with 2 children, was shot in the car park of a Gaelic football club in Glengormley late last night. The club is surrounded by loyalist housing estates and it's been attacked many times before.
At St Enda's Gaelic Football Club, tributes to Gerard Devlin, who was the first team coach. He was 36 and had 2 sons, aged 14 and 12. It was all too much for some who'd come to lay their flowers. Gerry Devlin had come to the club to collect relatives when he was shot dead in the car park. No organisation has said it was responsible, but local people are convinced the only possible motive is that he was targeted simply because of his religion.
Well, these premises behind me and the club members who attended have been the victims of a number of sectarian attacks in the past, and that's obviously a motive that we're looking at.
What would you say about this murder in general terms of condemnation?
Well, this was a dreadful attack, a very vicious attack, and a person who was well respected and gave a lot to the community here in Glengormley.
A former chairman of the club, Sean Fox, was murdered by loyalists before the 1994 ceasefires, and in May this year, Sean Brown, an official at another Gaelic club in County Londonderry, was murdered by the loyalist splinter group, the LVF. Dennis Murray, BBC News, North Belfast.
Farmers at more British ports are protesting against cheap beef imports. About 300 Welsh farmers trying to stop Irish beef arriving in Swansea. When they failed, metal barriers were thrown at the lorries. Picketing has also continued at Holyhead, Fishguard and Pembroke Dock. Farmers are expected to step up the action tomorrow, one of the busiest days for meat imports from the Irish Republic. Sport. And the rugby in England have drawn 26-all with New Zealand at Twickenham in the first ever tied match between the 2 sides. The draw ended the All Blacks' run of 11 consecutive wins this year and follows on from England's defeat in the first test against New Zealand 2 weeks ago.
This time the All Black haka went unchallenged by England. Instead they channeled superhuman effort into a start of such intensity it's difficult to recall anything to match it. Their reward was a try after just 4 minutes. David Rees's improvisation and determination personifying his team's approach. Just 5 minutes later, England had another. Greenwood's scintillating break was halted just short, but Hill was there to clean up. Then, to Twickenham's delighted disbelief, the inspirational Lawrence Dallaglio burst through to capitalise on another error from the uncharacteristically rattled All Blacks, who found themselves trailing 23-9 at half-time. The New Zealanders' response in the second half was a withering display of the reasons why they're currently the world's best side. And gallantly than defended, they inevitably yielded. First to Mertens, and then to Little, whose converted try put them 3 points in front. But England somehow produced a fierce late rally which earned them the Grayson penalty which levelled the scores. England had matched the best in one of the greatest games Twickenham has seen. Kevin Geary, BBC News.
And that's it. The News and Sports Report is at 6:30 on BBC Two and here on 1 at 10:30.
Taking breakfast with Frost at 8:30 tomorrow morning here on BBC One, Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott from the summit in Kyoto and Sir Paul McCartney.
Good evening. The milder weather we promised you for the weekend has duly arrived. In fact, next week, temperatures could pick up even further. Just take a look at the temperature maps. By Wednesday, there's even a little bit of yellow beginning to show itself across southwestern parts of the British Isles. However, it may be mild, but it is rather damp in some places. You can see some quite colourful radar echoes. And our next batch of wet weather, well, that'll be coming in from the west. You can see it arriving now, northwestern parts of Scotland and on the western side of Ireland. That'll push further eastwards overnight tonight. The wind's picking up as it moves in, but it is going to be a very mild night. We start off with some dry, bright weather on the eastern side of England tomorrow, but eventually the cloud and the rain will spill across from the west, the wind picking up as it moves in. And I think it's going to be fairly late on in the day before this brighter, showery weather arrives on the western side of Ireland. Again, tomorrow it's going to be pretty mild for the time of year. Later tomorrow, though, we're expecting the winds to start to pick up across Scotland and Northern Ireland. More of that later. Bye-bye.
Caroline's in a terrible quandary.
All I've done is run after him, and he just sat there with his feet up in his hotel.
Where was he last night?
Did you stay round somebody's? Absolutely everywhere, Fred. Wow, getting in at 7:30, that's a bit late, isn't it?
But is Juan a cheating love rat?
So all the time then he has had 2 girlfriends? Just because I'm from Essex, it doesn't mean to say he can treat me like a slapper.
It's time to get to the bottom of Juan Miguel. Holiday Reps, Thursday at 8:30 on BBC One.
A full roundup of the local news now on BBC One with Donna Traynor.
A Catholic man is murdered. The police don't rule out a sectarian motive. And remembering the victims of the Droppenwell bombing 15 years on. Good evening. The RUC say they haven't established a definite motive for the murder of Gerard Devlin at a GAA club on the outskirts of North Belfast last night. But officials at the St Enda's Club say they have no doubt it was a sectarian killing by loyalist terrorists.
Gerard Devlin was killed, as he called, at St Enda's GAA club on the Hightown Road to give relatives a lift home. Club members are sure it was a random sectarian killing. The RUC say it was a vicious and dreadful murder of a man who had given a lot to the community.
Gerard Devlin was a very respected member of the Glengormley community. He was heavily involved in sporting activities, both here at the GAA and also running a youth soccer team. This was a particularly violent murder, and we would appeal to the wider Glengormley community and anyone else who has information to contact us.
The RUC are waiting for the results of forensic tests before giving any further comment on a motive, but others are sure it was purely sectarian.
It's very serious, but I would appeal to all people to keep cool and calm. No retaliation, no not even think of it. We're in the middle of peace talks now and we're coming up to the time of Christmas. I'd say leave this to the police, that's their job to get the culprits.
Mr Devlin was married with 2 teenage sons and coached the club's senior side. The club itself has made no statement on the killing, but officials are to meet tomorrow. They say they have no doubt this is the latest in a series of sectarian attacks on the club and its members. Chris Capper, Newsline, Glengormley.
The IRSP has voted against calling on the INLA to introduce a ceasefire for the duration of the Stormont talks. But at its Ordaish in Dublin, the party voted unanimously to call on its military wing not to take direct action against the talks process. A memorial service has been held in Ballykelly for the 17 people murdered in one of the worst atrocities of the Troubles. 15 years ago, an INLA bomb exploded in the Droppenwell bar. 11 soldiers and 6 civilians were killed. Many others were injured.
This morning, soldiers of the Cheshire Regiment remembered their dead and the others who were killed. The regiment, which has returned to Ballykelly, lost 8 of its own in the blast. Hundreds of young soldiers joined relatives of the victims and survivors in an ecumenical service. All those taking part believed the commemoration had helped them with their grief.
It brings me closer to Ruth. Every time I come to this service, I just feel as if I see her face and smiling face walking in front of me. I can just imagine her walking in here and being so happy.
It brings back a lot of memories. Those people that were killed in the terrorist act have got to be remembered.
Among the congregation was one former soldier who has witnessed human suffering, not just in Northern Ireland, and he too found the service worthwhile.
It helped people like me too, because I am reminded of all the people that died, and there were, as I understand it and remember, 11 soldiers and 6 civilians. Each one of those lives was very precious.
As the last post rang out, the congregation bowed their heads and remembered those they'd loved and then lost. David Morgan, Newsline, Ballykelly.
The Conservative MP Andrew Hunter says Labour's policies on Northern Ireland are widening the gap in the bipartisan approach it and the Tories have traditionally adopted. Mr Hunter was addressing the UK Unionists' annual conference in Bangor. Party leader Robert McCartney again condemned the talks process as flawed.
The real purpose of this conference and of this party is to unite the pro-union people against a referendum which includes a package that will spell the end of the union, to alert them, to educate them, to inform them.
A couple in Armagh escaped injury last night when what appears to have been a crude homemade device was thrown at their house in Lissanally Gardens. It's thought the attack was not sectarian. Dozens of headstones have been vandalised at the City Cemetery in West Belfast. This morning, staff found around 40 damaged headstones in a plot near the White Rock Road. Some had been overturned while others had been ripped from their stone surrounds. And that's the local news so far. Until tomorrow evening from the Newsline team, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye for now.
Northern Ireland's sporting stars gather to celebrate the top achievements in the multifaceted world of sport. From the big names to the unsung heroes and the stars of the future, all are recognised in a gala evening of talented athletes. After another great year, it's time once again to honour and reward the outstanding contributions made to sport in the 1997 Belfast Telegraph Sports Awards, this Tuesday at 9:30 on BBC One.
Lily's all-time greats.
Hang on a minute, little Miss Hip-Hop and Mr. Cool. There's nothing I don't know about music. When there are grey skies.
What don't you mind in the list?
Pardon? I couldn't hear you. If I can't hear you and they can't hear you, our 29 million viewers at home going to hear you. Enunciate.
18 years ago, I met a pub pianist called Reg. Get the door.
The Lily Savage Show, tomorrow at 10 on BBC One.
Family fun with Jim Davidson's Generation Game in 30 minutes. First on BBC One, Thinking Caps on for some classic comedy.